Here we are, located in our plant room with our greenhouse. And what do I got? I got a beautiful bike here to tell you all about. This is a 2020 Foes mixer. This is an American-made trail slaying machine. I got this last year. No affiliation to Foes. I mean, I swiped my credit card the same as everyone else. And a few weeks later, this beautiful piece of machinery showed up, and I've been riding it and loving it ever since. So I know there's not a lot of information out there on it. And so I wanted to take this time to actually tell you all about it because this is a bike that needs talked about more. I've been so thoroughly impressed with it that I decided to get into the YouTube game to talk about it a little bit. All right, so Foes Mixer, they got a lot of information on their website about what the mixer itself is. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what this particular one is. So this is a size medium, and just for frame of reference, I'm 5'10". I've got a 6'1" wingspan, and I got a 32-inch inseam. Fully kitted, I am about 165 to 170 pounds, probably closer to the 165. And this bike here, I built this up. As you can see, I got a Jade X on the back there. I wanted to try, wait a second. I wanted to try coil out back, and was not disappointed. To pair that 152 millimeters of travel back here, I actually have a 160 millimeter fork right here. So that is an Onyx SC set at 160. And one of the coolest aspects about this bike is that in a medium frame, I can run this right here. That is a 200 millimeter dropper post. That is an inch of headspace. I could drop that another inch, and that is a PNW Cascade dropper post. The last thing I'll mention about this particular bike is that color is Magic Teal over Super Chrome, and there's nothing that I can do with any of my photography skills that is going to make that color pop as much as it actually does in real life. So anyway, that's a little bit about this particular bike. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I'm out of Washington State, actually, in Spokane. And so if you're kind of curious as to my primary stomping grounds, I am riding Beacon Hill and Mount Spokane primarily. So you get everything from steep rock rolls to rock gardens to routes to long fire road climbs to even some technical climbs. And I think that between those two locations and a lot of the videos out there on those locations that you can look at on Trail Forks, you'll kind of get a pretty good idea as to how this sort of the terrain that I'm tackling on this thing primarily. How it climbs, the word I always seem to come back to is comfortable. That's rear shock remains relatively active. You look down and it is doing what I would think some people would call bobbing, but I mean that's just that suspension is just working underneath there, and it just makes for a comfortable ride. You're going over rocks and roots and things like that. You're not getting hung up on the pedals, or you're not getting stalled out or anything like that. It remains nice and active and provides a very comfortable plush ride. The Jade has a lockout feature on it, and I rarely use it, only on really long sustained climbs. But other than that, I never touch it. Just leave it in trail mode all the time. Now, when it comes to like switchbacks or tight turns while you're climbing, it seems like the weight distribution here is pretty well maintained. You're able to make a tight switchback without losing control or feeling like you have to really jerk the thing around. You don't need trials experience to get this thing around a switchback. It'll make the corner. Once again, it's just a very comfortable climber. That front end is slack enough that you can enjoy it on the way down, but it's not so slack that it's wandering. And I just always come back to the fact that it is just a nice, comfortable bike to pedal. I mean, you just get your right cadence and you just cruise right to the top. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I've got no complaints. Now that we're done with the climbing, let's just go ahead and jump right into the descending. That's how does this thing feel when we're having the fun, right? That's kind of the whole thing. The first thing that I noticed when I built this bike up is that right away I could tell immediately as to how absolutely stiff that frame was. It was quite shocking to go from previously, like I mentioned, a Trek Remedy, which I thought was a really stiff bike, to this, and you just notice it right away. It's a pretty unique feeling, and it's what I noticed is that the pedaling just seems so much more responsive. You push, there's no give to it. That stiffness is also really well felt in rock gardens when you're getting bounced around. You can maintain a lot more precise of a line. The stiffness is also felt scrubbing corners. You're leaning that bike over, you're putting a lot of force into that frame, and with it maintaining just a very stiff and rigid feel to it, it's predictable. And so you're able to really you're able to have a very predictable ride. And so I just truly enjoy that aspect of it. It's a super stiff frame. The quality and the craftsmanship shine through in that ride quality with a stiff frame. So the next thing is cornering, right? I mentioned a stiff frame. It really helps corner well. Well, there's another thing that I think helps out with that. And that's that mullet setup. And what I mean by that is that mullet setup allows more room for your butt to just move around. You're able to get lower. You're able to get out of the way more. And I really do enjoy that. So that helps with cornering. The other thing that really helps with cornering is that monster truck dropper post up there. So you can slam that seat down, and then that slammed seat, the small tire, and then the small standover height, they really do allow you a lot of movement on the bike. So I don't know if you've ever heard this term, but I've heard the term, steering with your belly button. And this bike lends itself so well to steering with your belly button because you have the freedom to move to where your belly button can steer. The other thing that it just really seems to do well, and I don't know if it's the mullet, I don't know if it's the 29er up front, I don't know. I would need to put a big wheel on the back to see if it changes, but that rollover resistance is incredible. The ability for this bike, it'll plow through a lot of small stuff very well, and I mentioned before, predictably. It doesn't seem to get hung up on roots and rocks and things like that. It really does just kind of butter them all out. That coil has to help, and it's pretty impressive. No, the other thing that you'll notice, you can kind of notice is in a corner, in either a rock roll or even a jump landing, so like kind of harsher, big impacts, is that the mid stroke of that suspension is very supportive, in that when you get in there, it feels strong. It's not sharp. It's not abrupt. And so you see this on pink bike fails a lot when somebody hits the bottom of their travel and they go from a riding position to just getting buckled. And the way that this bike behaves, I don't tend to run into that nearly so much. Now, a lot of that's riding technique. A lot of that is your regular skill. I'm not saying I'm an incredibly skilled rider, but I am able to say that I am very able to notice how well that bike supports you when you have a big impact like that. So it's really nice and supple off the top. It really does hit that chattery stuff very well. Then the stiff frame and that very good mid-stroke support, it just gives a very predictable and nice feel to it when you hit those big the big impacts. So one thing that I will knock it on, that I find, is that let's say you hit that corner and it just feels good, you're going through it, and then you have a long straightaway. That suspension design does seem to not be as efficient in an absolute sprint. I find that kind of does bob a lot when you're sprinting, and it just doesn't feel as much of an efficient sprinter. And that is one thing that I have noticed, that I can't tell if a shock tune would help out with that, or if I just need to get fitter. And there's one of those things that I can really control, which is the fitness, and I'm working on that. But that shock tune, I'd have to research that a little bit more, but I will say that if you're the type of person that just sprints out of every single corner, you will notice a little bit of bob here. An air can may help out with that too. Not totally sure, but yeah. So stepping back from that aspect of it, I want to get back to the movement, right? So the ability to move around the frame. I so much enjoy slow speed technical stuff. So just imagine you're coming up to a rock roll and it's a steep, sketchy thing and you're trying to figure it out. Because you have all of that movement, you're able to get yourself into such a good position for whatever's coming up that a lot of those technical sections where people normally stop and get off the bike, this thing, because of all that room, you can track stand, and you can track stand much easier. I can't emphasize that enough. The movement around this thing is incredible, and maybe you see that with other bikes. Maybe I just wasn't getting that in my last bike, but it really stands out, and it makes for a very fun ride. Because that reach isn't super long, and you have all that movement, you just turn everything into a very active riding position. So you're jumping off everything, you're popping everything, you're able to really hit corners hard, you're able to turn direction, you're able to brake hard, and it's a truly enjoyable bike to descend on. The only knock I got is that sprinting comment, and roots, rocks, everything. I mean, rolling over them, it does well. Hitting jumps, it's a super fun bike to jump. Get to practice your whips. It's fun. It really is, and that's kind of my take on it. I haven't found anything that it felt under. I haven't felt anything that it felt underbiked on, and I also haven't been on a ride where I found it boring, because it's just got a lively feel to it, and you're able to turn kind of small mundane features into really fun aspects of the trail. So that's my general take on it, and it's been a hoot so far, and so I hope that helps. So I'm going to call this section my afterthoughts, and my goodness, just look at the quality of this thing. It is so cool seeing that embossed aluminum, mixer stamped in the side. You got the Made in the USA emblem on the back, and the quality of this bike, it just really shines through when you see it in person. I'm really trying to highlight exactly the color and everything else with this little glamour shot we got going on here. So yeah, the other thing that isn't been brought up is that water bottle holder, and I actually really like it. That dropper, I get low enough, I'm not putting any of my sweaty bits on it, and it's right there ready to drink. It's been really nice. Just don't put your electrolytes in it if you got a leaky water bottle, because it'll get right on that suspension leakage. But this bike is some really cool craftsmanship in it. One thing of note is this little tool storage area is a lot tighter than it looks, and I don't know if it's something with this bike in particular, but that bolt-to-bolt spacing doesn't quite fit a pump, and then if you even were able to fit it in there, it's still too tight to fit one of these toolboxes, and that was kind of unfortunate. Since this video, I have gone ahead and actually 3D printed a piece to fit in there, so I'm going to be testing that out with a high quality 3D print and seeing if I can get some tool storage there. So yeah, just something to keep in mind if you are really serious about your on-bike tool storage. The last thing I'll point out is that if you do go ahead and get a DVO set up with your foes, I actually had to get an extended crown race because the dampener side of my fork actually collided with the frame if you turn the handlebars too far to the right. I believe I got a 6mm Cane Creek to put on there, and so just keep that in mind, and that might also be why I'm seeing a little bit slacker numbers than what's published on the data on the geo chart. And this is awfully nitpicky, is that yes, that paint is absolutely beautiful, but there's also a downside to it. The paint's pretty easy to scratch, and if you do take a digger and you do scratch up that frame, because of how just gorgeous that paint is, those scratches really do come through. So if they offer some sort of protective coating or anything like that that you can throw on there for an extra charge, me going back, I would definitely do it. I find the scratches become a little bit more noticeable than I'd like. So honestly, that's the last piece of feedback I have. I've been loving the bike. So that's it. That's my 2020 Foes mixer. I'm pretty happy with it. I recommend it to quite a few people, and I hope you found this video at least interesting. It's been a great bike, and I do enjoy talking about it. If you got any more questions or comments, yeah, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll get back to you. If you have any questions for me specifically, get in touch through the comments, and I'll help you out as best I can. Anyway, once again, get out there and ride. Hopefully the weather's better for you than it is for me, and you can get out there and get some pedals in. Thanks.